Just hold still. Don't make that noise. Kalen's voice was a ragged whisper, swallowed by the echoing vastness of the derelict orbital station. He kept his plasma cutter aimed, not quite at her but definitely near her. The beam sizzled faintly against the frost-rimed bulkhead he just sliced through. Before him, curled in the cramped, zero-G maintenance conduit like some impossible deep-sea jewel, was the source of the unsettling, melodic humming. She unfolded slowly, limbs impossibly long and graceful, pushing off the opposing wall with webbed fingers. Her skin gods her skin. It wasn't one color but a slow, hypnotic shift of pearlescent blues and deep violets, traced with intricate lines of light that pulsed softly, rhythmically, in time with the sound vibrating through the metal deck beneath his magnetic boots. Long, dark tendrils, like silk and kelp, floated around her head, each tipped with a tiny spark of emerald bioluminescence. And her eyes, huge, liquid black, reflecting the faint emergency lighting, fixed on him with an unnerving intensity. She tilted her head, the humming deepening into a low, resonant thrum that vibrated in his teeth. Noise. Her voice was a liquid chime, layered with that same unsettling resonance. It wasn't standard, not quite, laced with clicks and elongated vowels, yet somehow impossibly he understood it. Is song, is being. Her gaze flickered down to the cutter, then back to his face. A ripple of emerald light traced the edge of her jawline. You cut loud. Scare, echoes. Kalen lowered the cutter, slightly baffled. Scavenging Whisperwind Station was supposed to be routine. Dead station, minimal security, decent scrap. Finding an alien stowaway who looked like she'd swum out of a nebula wasn't in the manual, especially one whose very presence made the air feel thick and charged like ozone before a lightning strike. Right. Sorry to, interrupt your being. He tried for sarcastic, landed somewhere near strangled. Look, I don't know who or what you are, but this station is off limits, decommissioned, dangerous. Her lips, full and the color of twilight, curved slightly. The light patterns on her skin shifted, warmer hues, rose and gold, flickering beneath the blues. Dangerous. She echoed the word, testing its shape. One long-fingered hand reached out, slowly, palm up. The emerald tips of her tendrils pulsed faster. You dangerous. He eyed the outstretched hand. Her skin seemed to shimmer, throwing off faint motes of light. Touching her felt like a profoundly stupid idea. Every instinct screamed trap. Yet the way the light played across her collarbones, the vulnerable curve of her neck, it short-circuited something in his brain. Nah, just a guy trying to make a living. He kept the cutter ready but didn't raise it again. You, on the other hand, you're not exactly standard fauna for this sector. Where did you come from? The light on her skin flickered uncertainly, violet deepening. Come from ship. She gestured vaguely towards the outer hull. Broke, fell. Her gaze swept around the cramped conduit, landing back on him. Cold here, empty. The humming started again, softer this time, laced with something that felt disturbingly like melancholy. It tugged at something in his chest, an old, familiar ache he usually kept buried under layers of cynicism and engine grease. Yeah, well, cold and empty is sort of Whisperwind's whole vibe. He holstered the cutter, deciding she wasn't an immediate threat, probably. Look, Lyraxi. The name slipped out, unbidden, melodic like her voice. Her eyes widened slightly, the black irises seeming to deepen. The light on her skin flared, a sudden pulse of brilliant gold. You know, he blinked, confused. Know what your name? How did he know? It felt resonant, like hearing a song you'd forgotten you loved. I guess. Pushed off the wall again, drifting closer, too close. He could feel a faint warmth radiating from her, smell a strange, clean scent like rain on hot metal and something floral he couldn't place. Her tendrils brushed his arm, sending a jolt like static electricity up his spine. You feel name, she whispered, her voice right beside his ear, the resonance vibrating through his skull. You Kalen. He flinched back, bumping against the bulkhead. How the hell did she know his name? He hadn't said it. Had he? Panic flared, cold and sharp. Okay, that's creepy. How are you doing that? Lyraxi tilted her head again, the emerald lights in her tendrils swirling. A playful, almost teasing shimmer danced across her cheekbones. Not doing, feeling, you broadcast, loud. She tapped a long finger against her temple. Here. And she tapped her chest, right over her heart, the light there pulsing a soft, steady blue. Here. Kalen stared at her, his carefully constructed walls of detachment crumbling. Broadcasting, feeling his name, this was way above his pay grade. He was a pilot, a scavenger, good with engines and avoiding entanglements. This, this felt like entanglement incarnate, shimmering and resonant and far too close. He needed to get her off his potential salvage claim. Now. Right, well, Kalen is leaving and you should too. There are patrol sweeps, corporate enforcers, Cygnus Corp doesn't like trespassers. He hoped the name drop would scare her. It usually worked on petty thieves. Lyraxie's reaction wasn't fear. The light on her skin went supernova bright for a split second, washing the conduit in blinding white, before snapping back to a turbulent, angry crimson shot through with violet. The resonant hum became a low growl that vibrated the deck plates. Cygnus. She spat the name like venom. Her tendrils coiled tightly, the emerald tips flaring like warning beacons. They hunt. Her eyes locked onto his, suddenly sharp, assessing. You Cygnus. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Kalen instinctively raised his hands. Whoa, no, definitely not. Hate those corporate bastards. They impounded my last ship over a docking fee dispute. He tried to project sincerity, though his heart was hammering against his ribs. Her crimson glow softened slightly, fatting back towards violet, but the tension remained, a palpable force field between them. Why you here? She asked, the chime in her voice still sharp. Same reason as you, probably, trying to stay hidden, trying to find something worth grabbing before the vultures pick it clean. He gestured vaguely around the derelict station. Scrap data cores, maybe some forgotten tech. He needed to re-establish control, get back to business. Look, Lyraxie, nice chatting, but I've got work to do. You find your own corner of this rust bucket, I'll find mine. We stay out of each other's way. She drifted closer again, ignoring his attempt at dismissal. The proximity was unnerving, her alienness both repellent and magnetic. He could see the fine, almost invisible scales that patterned her shoulders, shimmering like oil on water. This station. Failing, she murmured, her gaze distant, unfocused. Life support weak, air thin soon. Kalen frowned. He knew the risks, had calculated his window based on the station's slow decay. I know I'm not planning on staying long. Cygnus, come soon, she insisted, her dark eyes fixing on him again. They track me. The crimson flickered warningly under her skin. My resonance, they feel. A cold dread trickled down Kalen's spine. If Cygnus Corp was hunting her and she was right here. They wouldn't just politely ignore his little salvage operation. They'd sterilize the whole station, him included. Track you? How close? Lyraxie closed her eyes for a moment. The light patterns on her skin flowed and eddied, complex and unreadable. Close, day maybe less. She opened her eyes, the violet deep and serious. You have ship, shit. This was escalating way too fast. Yeah, I have a ship, small freighter, barely space-worthy. Take. Me, she stated, not a request but a simple declaration of fact. The light around her pulsed with conviction. Take me away, from Cygnus, from cold. Kalen stared at her, trapped between the absurdity of the situation and the undeniable logic. If Cygnus was coming, staying here was suicide, but taking her, an alien fugitive radiating weird energy and attracting corporate heat, that was a different kind of suicide. Absolutely not, he snapped. No way. I'm not getting involved in your problems. Find your own ride. Her expression didn't change, but the resonant hum intensified slightly, carrying an undercurrent of pleading, desperation. It vibrated against his shields, finding cracks he didn't know existed. Kalen. She said his name again, softly, the sound wrapping around him. You feel. Her hand lifted, hovering inches from his chest. He could feel the warmth, the faint electrostatic crackle. Help me. He wanted to say no. He needed to say no. Running contraband was one thing. Harboring an alien wanted by a major corporation was interstellar treason territory. But the way she looked at him, the raw vulnerability beneath the alien strangeness, the shared threat, he scrubbed a hand over his face. Damn it. This was a terrible, terrible idea. Fine, fine, but you do exactly what I say, understand? No humming, no glowing, no feeling people. Got it. A slow smile spread across her twilight lips, luminous and breathtaking. The light on her skin flared into a soft, warm gold. Got it, she chimed, the resonance pure relief. Then before he could react, she darted forward, pressing her palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. A shockwave not of electricity but of pure sensation, warmth, light, a dizzying sense of connection, flooded him. Her golden glow pulsed against his shirt, mirroring his hammering heartbeat, and for a terrifying second he felt seen. Utterly, completely seen. He stumbled back, yanking his t-shirt away from his skin as if burned, though there was no heat, just overload. What the hell was that? He choked out, heart pounding erratically. Lyraxi retracted her hand, looking almost surprised herself. The golden light faded, replaced by swirling patterns of curious green and apologetic blue. Feeling, she murmured, tilting her head. Confirming, you strong, resonance clear, not lie. Kalen stared, rubbing his chest. It still tingled, a phantom warmth spreading beneath his skin. Confirming, you think I'd lie about getting us out of here with Cygnus breathing down our necks? He gestured wildly. We need to move. Now my ship, the Rust Bucket, is docked 3 levels down, Auxiliary Bay 7. Can you handle vacuum transit in an emergency suit? She nodded, the tendrils swirling around her face. My skin adapts, short time. Need a filter for breathing. Right, filters. He rummaged in his salvage pack, pulling out a spare emergency suit B-pouch containing a universal atmospheric filter mask. It was designed for vaguely humanoid faces, clumsy and bulky. He held it out. Here. It's not pretty, but it'll keep station crud out of your lungs. Lyraxi took it gingerly, examining the utilitarian plastic and rubber with fascination. The lights on her skin shifted through inquisitive greens and yellows. She attempted to put it on, fumbling with the straps, her long fingers seeming ill-suited to the task. He sighed, stepping closer against his better judgment. Here, let me. He reached out, intending to help with the straps, but his fingers brushed the smooth, cool skin of her cheek. Another jolt, less intense this time, but still startling. A soft blue glow flared where he touched, and he felt an echo of her surprise, her awareness of him. He quickly fastened the mask, avoiding further contact. Her large eyes blinked at him over the top of the filter. Tight, she mumbled, her voice muffled. Yeah, well, better than vacuum exposure. He turned, grabbing his cutter and pack. Come on, stay close, stay quiet. He led the way out of the conduit, moving swiftly through the darkened, frost-covered corridors of Whisperwind. The station groaned around them, the death rattles of decaying metal and failing systems. Lyraxi moved behind him with unnerving silence, her bare feet making no sound on the grated deck. Occasionally, he'd feel a faint prickle on the back of his neck, glance back, and find her intense gaze fixed on him, her filtered face unreadable, but the subtle light shifts beneath her skin suggesting a whirlwind of alien thought and feeling. They reached the turbolift shaft, activating the emergency manual override. As the dilapidated cage began its slow, grinding descent, Kalen leaned against the wall, trying to process the insanity. He had an alien refugee on his ship, an alien refugee who could feel names and emotions and broadcast them back. An alien refugee hunted by Cygnus Corp. His life, already precarious, had just taken a sharp turn into chaos. He glanced at Lyraxi. She stood perfectly still, her tendrils hanging limply, the lights on her skin muted to a dull, swirling gray-blue like a stormy sea. She looked smaller now, less like an otherworldly being and more like someone lost and afraid. That damned resonant melancholy tugged at him again. So, he said gruffly, breaking the silence. Lyraxi, that your real name, or just what my brain decided to call you? She looked up, her eyes wide above the mask. The gray-blue light warmed slightly. Is. Part, she said slowly. Full name long requires resonance. Lyraxi is essence, what you perceive. Right, essence, he shook his head. Keep it simple, Kalen, he muttered to himself. The lift shuddered to a halt, level 3 almost there. The doors groaned open onto a corridor thick with emergency foam residue likely from a past fire. Watch your step, he warned, stepping out. A faint, rhythmic pinging echoed from further down the corridor. His blood ran cold, proximity alert. Someone else was on this level, someone with active sensors. Cygnus, Lyraxi whispered, her voice tight, the light under her skin flaring an urgent warning red. Kalen grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a collapsed support beam. Quiet, he hissed. The pinging grew louder. Heavy footsteps crunched on debris. Figures in sleek black Cygnus Corp enforcer armor rounded the corner, their helmet lights cutting through the gloom. They weren't moving fast, sweeping, searching. Kalen's heart hammered. Trapped. Scan signature detected, Sector Gamma 9. One enforcer's synthesized voice crackled over their comms. Matches target profile, bioresonant spike. Kalen risked a glance around the beam. They were maybe 30 meters away, moving methodically towards the turbolift. Towards them. He looked at Lyraxi huddled beside him. Even through the mask he could see the fear in her eyes, the way the crimson light pulsed erratically under her skin. Her tendrils were coiled tight against her skull. This was bad. Very bad. His little freighter had minimal defenses, certainly nothing that could handle armed corporate enforcers. Running wasn't an option here. Fighting was suicide. He needed a distraction, a big one. His eyes scanned the ruined corridor. Collapsed conduits, sparking panels, spilled emergency foam, flammable, sometimes. He eyed a nearby junction box, wires frayed and spitting sparks. An idea, stupid and desperate, formed. "Okay," he whispered, leaning close to Lyraxi, his breath fogging her mask slightly. "New plan. When I move, you run straight down that corridor. Auxiliary Bay 7 is the third door on the left. Get the outer hatch open. Ship's unlocked. Can you do that?" Her eyes widened, the red light flickering with alarm. "You," she whispered back, her voice thick with that resonant hum now vibrating with anxiety. "Distraction," he said grimly. "Just go." He didn't wait for an answer. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed a loose piece of metallic debris, gauged the distance to the sparking junction box, and hurled it. It struck the panel with a clang and a shower of brilliant sparks, igniting the dry foam residue on the floor in a sudden whoosh of orange flame. "Now!" he yelled, shoving Lyraxi forward. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second, her dark eyes meeting his, a complex swirl of fear and something else, resolve. Then she was gone, sprinting silently down the corridor, a fleeting silhouette against the flickering firelight. The enforcers reacted instantly. Contact. Hostile action. Their weapons raised, they advanced cautiously towards the fire, using thermal imaging to scan through the smoke and flames. Kalen didn't wait. He scrambled in the opposite direction, ducking behind machinery, trying to circle back towards the bays. Hopping Lyraxi had enough of a head start. He skidded around a corner, heart pounding, and nearly collided with another enforcer who had evidently flanked around. The soldier raised his pulse rifle. Kalen reacted purely on instinct, throwing his heavy salvage pack like a weapon. It caught the enforcer square in the chest, knocking him off balance with a grunt. Kalen didn't wait to see the result. He scrambled past, diving through a service hatch just as pulse fire sizzled against the frame where his head had been. He landed hard on a grated catwalk one level below, the impact jarring his teeth. Below him lay the cavernous expanse of the auxiliary docking bays, and there, blessedly familiar, was the rust bucket, its scarred hull looking ridiculously vulnerable under the harsh emergency lights. The outer bay door was cycling open. Lyraxi. She made it. But the enforcers wouldn't be far behind. He scrambled down an access ladder, dropping the last 10 feet to the deck plating. He sprinted towards his ship, shouting, "Lower the ramp." The ship's main ramp hissed downwards, revealing Lyraxi silhouetted in the entry. She removed the filter mask, her face luminous in the ship's interior lights, tendrils swirling anxiously. He scrambled up the ramp just as pulse bolts started impacting the hull near the bay door. "Get us out of here," he yelled, slapping the ramp control panel. As the ramp sealed, he sprinted towards the cockpit, Lyraxi close behind. He threw himself into the pilot's seat, hands flying across the worn control console, bypassing pre-flight checks. Engines whined to life. "Strap in," he ordered, not looking back. He felt rather than saw her sink into the co-pilot chair, her strange resonant energy filling the small cockpit. Outside, the heavy clang of magnetic grapples hit the hull. "Shit, they're trying to lock us down." Kalen slammed the throttle forward. The rust bucket shuddered, engines straining against the grapples. Warning lights flashed across the console. "Hull integrity failing," the ship's synthesized voice announced calmly. "Need help?" Lyraxi asked, her voice tight. Her hands hovered over the console, lights swirling around her fingertips. "Can you overload their magnetic locks?" he grunted, wrestling with the controls. "Maybe. Requires focus. Resonance." Kalen gritted his teeth. "Do it." Lyraxi closed her eyes. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin flared, swirling rapidly, concentrating into blinding points of light on her palms and forehead. A low, powerful hum filled the cockpit, vibrating through the seat, through Kalen's bones. It wasn't just sound, it was pressure, energy building, focusing. Outside, the magnetic grapples sparked erratically. The ship's status board showed massive energy surges directed at the docking clamps. Almost. Lyraxi murmured, sweat beading on her temples despite the cockpit's chill. The hum intensified, reaching an almost painful pitch. Kalen felt it in his teeth, a dizzying wave washing over him. Then, with a violent jolt and the screech of tortured metal, the grapples overloaded and retracted. "Yes," Kalen roared, slamming the thrusters to maximum. The rust bucket leaped away from the docking bay, engines screaming in protest. He threw the ship into a sharp, evasive turn, careening through the station's external superstructure, dodging debris and antenna arrays. Behind them, he saw two sleek Cygnus patrol cutters detaching from the station, moving to intercept. "Okay, alien girl," he muttered, knuckles white on the yoke. "Hope you like bumpy rides." Lyraxi slumped back in her seat, the intense light fatting from her skin, leaving it a pale, washed-out blue. She was breathing heavily, her tendrils limp. The effort had clearly cost her. "Are you okay?" he asked, surprised by the concern in his own voice. She gave a weak nod, her dark eyes meeting his. A faint spark of gold flickered in their depths. "Okay," she whispered. "You fly fast." "Have to." He swerved hard to avoid a chunk of detached solar panel. The Cygnus cutters were gaining, their weapons charging. Damn it, they're faster and better armed. He scanned his console, looking for options. There weren't many. The rust bucket was a freighter, not a fighter. "Can you do that resonance thing again? Maybe mess with their targeting?" Lyraxi pushed herself upright, though she still looked drained. "Can try, weaker now." She placed her palms flat on the dashboard. The blue light returned, softer this time, pulsing gently. The resonant hum filled the cockpit again, but it felt different, searching, probing. "They lock," she murmured. Target lock alarms blared on Kalen's console. "Yeah, I see that." He threw the ship into a corkscrew maneuver, pulse fire stitching across space where they'd been moments before. "Need that interference now." The hum intensified slightly. Lyraxi's brow furrowed in concentration. On his screen, the enemy target lock flickered, unstable. "It's working, keep it up." He risked a glance at her. The effort was visible, the strain tightening her features, the light under her skin pulsing erratically. He felt a strange pang, a reluctance to push her when she was clearly depleted. But they didn't have a choice. Another volley of pulse fire came dangerously close, scorching the portside view screen. "Hold on," Kalen yelled, spotting a dense asteroid cluster ahead. He plunged the rust bucket into it, the ship groaning as micrometeoroids pinged off the hull. He cut the main engines, letting their momentum carry them, hopping to lose the pursuers in the sensor clutter. The Cygnus ships followed cautiously, unwilling to risk the denser parts of the field. Silence descended in the cockpit, broken only by the pinging of debris and Lyraxi's soft breathing. The resonant hum faded as she lowered her hands, slumping back again. The blue light on her skin was very faint now. "Did we lose them?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kalen watched the scanner intently. The Cygnus signatures were still there, hovering at the edge of the cluster, scanning. "Not yet, but we bought some time." He let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He glanced over at Lyraxi. Her eyes were closed, her chest rising and falling shallowly. She looked utterly exhausted, vulnerable. He reached over and unbuckled her harness. "Get some rest," he said gruffly. "You earned it." She opened her eyes, looking at him with a strange mixture of gratitude and weariness. "Thank you, Kalen." He busied himself with plotting a course through the asteroid field, trying to ignore the way her saying his name still sent a weird jolt through him. They drifted in silence for a while, hiding among the tumbling rocks. He occasionally risked powering up the passive sensors. The Cygnus ships were still searching, patient predators. He needed a plan, a real escape. He looked at the navigation charts, calculating jump points, fuel consumption, risks. Any known route would be monitored. He needed somewhere unexpected, somewhere Cygnus wouldn't think to look. His eyes fell on the coordinates for Xylos Prime's third moon, a lush, uninhabited water world officially quarantined due to unstable atmospheric conditions, but rumored among smugglers to have hidden coves and breathable air pockets near the surface. Risky, very risky, but better than facing those cutters head-on. He started inputting the calculations, keeping the power signature minimal. He glanced at Lyraxy again. She seemed to be asleep, her breathing deeper now, the light on her skin a steady, calm azure. Even in repose she was captivating, alien and beautiful. He found himself wondering about her world, her people, what made Cygnus hunt her so relentlessly. What was this resonance they were so desperate to control? He shook his head, trying to focus. Attachments were dangerous. Curiosity was dangerous. Getting involved was definitely dangerous. Yet, watching her sleep, knowing she'd trusted him, risked herself for him, something shifted inside him. The old walls felt a little less solid. He finished the jump calculations. It would be tight, draining most of their remaining fuel but potentially survivable. He just had to wait for the right moment, a clear vector out of the asteroid field. He settled back in his seat, the silence stretching, filled only by the whisper of the life support and the faint, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to emanate from Lyraxy even in sleep. It was strangely comforting. He closed his eyes just for a second, exhaustion catching up. When he opened them again, Lyraxy was watching him, her dark eyes luminous in the dim cockpit. The azure light on her skin pulsed softly. She didn't speak, just held his gaze. A silent question hung in the air. What now? He offered a small, tired smile. Now, he whispered, gesturing towards the star chart display, we disappear. The jump to the Xylos system was jarring, a nauseating wrench through spacetime that left Kalen's teeth aching and the rust bucket groaning in protest. Alarms blared as they dropped back into real space, systems flickering. Stabilizing, the ship's voice announced blandly amidst the chaos. Multiple system failures detected. Life support operating at 60%. Kalen cursed, wrestling with the controls. Come on, you piece of junk, hold together. Lyraxy was gripping the arms of her chair, her skin flashing distressed patterns of violet and gray. The resonant hum was back, tight with anxiety. Are we safe? Define safe, Kalen grunted, manually rerouting power to the failing environmental controls. We're here. Xylos Prime's third moon dead ahead. Looks like Cygnus didn't follow us through the jump. He pointed at the main view screen. The moon dominated the view, a swirling marble of deep blues and vibrant greens, partially veiled in thick white clouds. Now we just need to land this thing before it falls apart. The descent was harrowing. Atmospheric turbulence battered the ship, and Kalen fought constantly to maintain control. Warning lights flashed like a deranged nebula. Lyraxy sat rigidly, her eyes wide, the light under her skin mirroring the violent flashes outside. But as they broke through the lower cloud layers, the turbulence eased, revealing a breathtaking landscape. Vast oceans, dotted with islands blanketed in emerald jungles and ringed by turquoise reefs. Waterfalls cascaded down sheer cliffs into the sea. Kalen steered them towards a remote archipelago, aiming for a deep, hidden cove he remembered from smugglers' tailies, shielded by rock formations, with a rumored freshwater spring. Finding it took longer than he liked, his fuel gauge dipping dangerously low. Lyraxy seemed to relax slightly as the lush world unfolded below, the colors on her skin softening to greens and blues, echoing the landscape. Finally, he spotted it, a narrow inlet, almost completely hidden behind towering, vine-choked sea stacks. He eased the rust bucket down, the landing gear sinking slightly into soft, damp sand at the edge of a dense jungle. With a final shudder, the engines died. Silence fell, thick and humid, broken only by the sound of distant surf and the chirping of unseen alien creatures. Kalen slumped back, utterly drained. We made it. Lyraxy slowly unbuckled her harness, her gaze fixed on the view screen, now filled with the vibrant green of the jungle just beyond the ramp. Is beautiful, she breathed, a soft wonder in her voice. The light on her skin glowed a gentle, appreciative green. Yeah, well, don't get too attached. Air's probably toxic, water's probably acidic, and the local wildlife likely views us as crunchy snacks. He ran a diagnostic. Ship banged up. Need to make repairs before we can even think about leaving. Life support is stable for now, but limited power. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Okay, first things first. Let's see if the legends are true about the air. He activated the external sensors. After a moment, the analysis scrolled onto the screen. Nitrogen, oxygen. High humidity, trace elements unknown but breathable. Lucky break. He hit the ramp controls. It lowered with a groan, opening onto the beach. Warm, humid air, thick with the scent of salt, damp earth, and exotic blossoms, flooded the ship. Lyraxi inhaled deeply, her eyes closing for a moment. A contented turquoise light pulsed across her shoulders. She stood, moving towards the ramp like someone drawn by an invisible current. "Careful," Kalen warned, grabbing a scanner and a sidearm. "Stay close to the ship until I check things out." She paused at the edge of the ramp, looking back at him, a playful shimmer in her eyes. "You worry, Kalen." "I worry about getting eaten," he retorted, stepping onto the sand. It was warm beneath his boots. The jungle edge was a dense wall of tangled vines, enormous leaves, and bizarrely shaped trees pulsing with faint internal light. The air vibrated with insectal buzzing and strange bird calls. Lyraxi followed him out, her bare feet sinking slightly into the sand. She looked around, tilting her head, listening intently, her tendrils swaying gently. The light on her skin shifted constantly, reacting to the environment, greens, blues, yellows, mirroring the sunlight filtering through the canopy, the color of the water, the flash of a brightly colored bird darting past. It was mesmerizing, distracting. Kalen forced himself to focus on the scanner readings. No immediate threats detected. Water from a nearby cascade tumbling down mossy rocks tested potable. Okay, maybe this wasn't a complete disaster. Lyraxi wandered towards the water's edge, dipping her webbed fingers into the clear, turquoise shallows. A ripple of pure, joyous cyan light spread from her hand across her arm. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes and flowing water, utterly captivating. Kalen felt an answering smile tug at his own lips before he could stop it. He cleared his throat. "Right, water's good. Air's good. Let's set up a perimeter sensor array while we still have power." Lyraxi turned from the water, her expression shifting, becoming more serious. The playful lights subsided, replaced by a thoughtful blue. "Cygnus will search," she said. "They know my capabilities, they will scan for resonance." "Can you shield yourself, dampen it somehow?" She tilted her head. "Is like holding breath, can do short time, but is tiring, unnatural." She looked around the cove, her gaze lingering on the dense jungle. "This place feels strong. Life resonates, might help mask." "Good, maybe nature provides its own jamming signal." He started unpacking the sensor nodes. Lyraxi drifted closer, watching him work, her curiosity evident in the bright green flickers across her skin. "Why help me, Kalen?" she asked softly, the question hanging in the humid air. He paused, fumbling with a connector cable. He didn't have a simple answer. Because Cygnus pissed him off. Because she looked lost. Because despite the weirdness, the danger, there was something about her. He shrugged, avoiding her direct gaze. "Seemed like the thing to do. Besides, Cygnus was gonna vaporize me anyway once they found you. Self-preservation, mostly." Lyraxi moved closer still, close enough for him to feel the faint warmth radiating from her, smell that unique scent of rain and flowers. She reached out, her long fingers hovering just above his forearm. The air crackled faintly. "You feel more," she whispered, her voice a low, resonant hum. The blue light on her skin deepened, swirling with hints of gold. He froze, caught in her intense gaze, unable to pull away. Her touch, when it came, wasn't a jolt this time, but a slow, spreading warmth, sinking through his skin, bypassing muscle and bone, touching something deeper. He felt an echo of her curiosity, her cautious trust, and beneath it, a profound loneliness that mirrored his own. Her light pulsed against his skin, a silent conversation he barely understood but felt implicitly. He saw flashes in his mind, not memories but feelings, sensations, the cold emptiness of the derelict station, the terror of the chase, the overwhelming relief of reaching this sanctuary. Her feelings. He gasped, pulling his arm back instinctively. The connection broke, leaving a tingling emptiness behind. "Don't do that," he said, his voice rougher than intended. Lyraxi looked down at her hand, then back at him, her expression unreadable, the light shifting to a confused violet. "Is how we know," she said simply. "How we connect, share. Humans don't share like that." Kalen struggled to regain his composure. "We use words, distance. We don't just beam feelings into each other's heads." A flicker of something like amusement crossed her face. "Words hide," she murmured. "Distance cold, feeling is truth." She took a small step back, granting him the space he seemed to need. The violet light softened. "Will, try your way. Distance." But her eyes held a spark, a challenge. And Kalen had the sinking feeling that distance wasn't something she, or perhaps even he, was truly capable of maintaining for long. The air between them felt charged, thick with unspoken questions and the undeniable pull of something new, something dangerous, something he was increasingly afraid he wanted. Days bled into a strange rhythm in the hidden cove. Kalen worked tirelessly on the rust bucket, coaxing damaged systems back online with salvaged parts, ingenuity and sheer stubbornness. Lyraxi explored. She moved through the jungle with a silent grace that unnerved him, seeming completely at home amongst the glowing flora and strange fauna. She'd spend hours near the waterfall or sitting by the ocean's edge, humming her resonant songs, the light on her skin mirroring the shifting tides and dappled sunlight. Sometimes she'd bring him strange, iridescent fruits that tasted like starlight and honey, or point out edible roots with a flick of her tendrils. Communication remained a strange mix of broken standard gestures and those unnerving flashes of shared feeling that Lyraxi seemed to initiate effortlessly, despite his protests. He learned her species, the Lumerian, communicated primarily through resonance and empathetic projection. Words were secondary, often inadequate. He learned she was fleeing not just Cygnus, but the aftermath of a catastrophe that had decimated her people, leaving her one of the few survivors, her unique resonant signature a beacon for those who sought to exploit it. He tried to maintain his distance, focusing on the repairs, reminding himself she was trouble, a complication he couldn't afford. But it was increasingly difficult. Her presence filled the small cove, filled his cramped ship, filled his thoughts. He found himself watching her swim in the lagoon at twilight, her body a fluid silhouette of shifting light against the darkening water, and felt a pang of longing so sharp it stole his breath. The banter between them grew sharper, laced with an undeniable undercurrent of attraction. She teased him about his loud, clumsy human ways, his reliance on clunky technology. He countered by mocking her habit of glowing like a cheap casino sign whenever she got excited or annoyed. "Is not glowing," she corrected him one evening, poking him lightly in the ribs as he struggled with a stubborn power conduit. A jolt, familiar now, shot through him. "Is expression, you humans blank faces, hard to read." "We have expressions," he protested, trying to ignore the way her touch lingered. "Smiling, frowning, eye-rolling when aliens poke us," she laughed, the sound echoing musically off the hull. "Small signs, easy to miss, easy to fake." Her eyes met his, the playful light fading slightly, replaced by that unnerving perceptive quality. "You fake much, Kalen." He straightened up, wiping grease from his hands onto a rag, deliberately breaking the proximity. "I survive. Sometimes that requires strategic blankness." "Strategic coldness," she countered softly, tilting her head. The light on her skin was a soft, questioning blue. He looked away, focusing on the conduit. "Something like that." Later, while running a systems check in the cockpit, she drifted in, holding one of the ship's emergency nutrient bars, examining it with distaste. "This dry, like dust." "Luxury item," Kalen quipped without looking up. "Enjoy the gourmet experience." She made a soft clicking sound, a Lumerian expression he'd come to recognize as amusement mixed with disdain. She came up behind his chair, leaning over his shoulder to look at the diagnostic screen. Her tendrils brushed against the back of his neck, sending shivers down his spine despite the humid air. He could smell her unique scent, feel the warmth radiating from her. "Engine core, still unstable?" she asked, her voice close to his ear. Her resonance was a low thrum he felt more than heard. "Working on it," he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. "Need to recalibrate the energy matrix, but the console interface is fried in that section." "Maybe I help," she offered. Before he could object, she placed her hands flat on the console on either side of the damaged interface screen. Her eyes closed and the familiar blue light flared under her skin, intensifying. The low hum deepened. Kalen watched, fascinated and wary, as faint lines of light began to trace the circuitry beneath the console's surface, mirroring the patterns on her skin. Energy readings on the functioning parts of the display flickered, responding to her resonant field. "Careful," he warned. "Don't overload it." "Shhh," she murmured, concentrating, feeling pathways, blockages. He could feel the energy shift in the cockpit, a tangible pressure building. The lights flickered. He saw her brow furrow, a bead of sweat tracing a path through the soft glow on her temple. The light around her hands pulsed, a focused beam of resonant energy directed into the machine. Suddenly, the damaged screen flickered to life, displaying garbled code, then stabilizing, showing the engine core matrix alignment sequence. Lyraxi gasped, pulling her hands back as if burned. The light on her skin flared erratically, flashes of red, gold, white, then subsided, leaving her looking pale and drained again. The resonant hum faded completely. "Did it work?" she asked breathlessly. Kalen stared at the now functioning screen, then at her. How did you do that?" She leaned back against the bulkhead, taking deep breaths. "Resonance interacts with energy, with patterns, like singing to machine, finding harmony." She gave a weak smile. "Your machine's stubborn, off-key." He ran the final calibration sequence. The engine core readings stabilized, shifting from angry red warnings to calm, steady green. He let out a long breath. "You fixed it." He looked at her, truly looked at her. The effort it had cost her, the sheer alienness of what she'd done, the fact that she'd done it for him, for them, it hit him with the force of a physical blow. He stood up, turning to face her. The cockpit felt suddenly very small. She watched him, her dark eyes wide, her chest rising and falling quickly. The faint blue light pulsed gently under her skin, a fragile rhythm in the sudden quiet. He took a step towards her, then another. He didn't know what he intended. Thank her. Yell at her for taking the risk. Kiss her. The last thought slammed into him, unexpected and overwhelming. He stopped, inches away, close enough to see the intricate, shifting patterns beneath her irises, the faint shimmer of scales along her collarbone. The air crackled between them. Her scent filled his senses. Her resonance, though faint, tugged at him, a silent invitation. "Kalen," she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with that mesmerizing hum. Her hand lifted, hovering in the space between them, mirroring his own internal hesitation. The teasing was gone, replaced by a raw, open vulnerability that mirrored his own carefully guarded core. Desire, sharp and undeniable, coiled low in his gut. He wanted to bridge the gap, feel that startling connection again, consequences be damned. But the fear was still there, fear of Cygnus, fear of losing control, fear of what touching her, truly connecting with her, might mean. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge. "We should," his voice was hoarse. "We should conserve power." He turned abruptly back to the console, shutting down non-essential systems, needing the mechanical task to ground himself. Behind him, he felt Lyraxi's resonant field shift, a wave of something that felt achingly like disappointment washing over him before she quickly masked it. The blue light on her skin dimmed, becoming flat, opaque. "Yes," she said, her voice carefully neutral, the chime muted. "Conserve power." She slipped out of the cockpit without another word, leaving Kalen alone with the hum of the newly stabilized engines and the heavy weight of unspoken tension. He leaned his forehead against the cool transparisteel of the viewscreen, watching the alien jungle outside pulse with its own strange life, feeling more lost and confused than ever. The near intimacy in the cockpit shifted something. The teasing banter evaporated, replaced by a heavy awareness, a careful dance around the charged space between them. Kalen threw himself into the final ship repairs with manic energy, needing the physical labor to distract from the turmoil inside. Lyraxi became quieter, spending more time alone by the water, her resonant humming sometimes carrying a thread of melancholy that tugged at him even from the distance he tried to enforce. One sweltering afternoon, while Kalen was replacing a damaged sensor array on the ship's outer hull, a sudden, piercing shriek echoed from the jungle, followed by frantic splashing sounds from the lagoon. He dropped his tools, grabbing his sidearm as he vaulted off the ship's wing onto the sand. "Lyraxi." He sprinted towards the water's edge, his heart pounding. He saw her struggling in the shallows, entangled in thick, dark, rope-like weeds that seemed to have sprung from the lagoon floor, pulling her under. A large, reptilian creature with multiple eyes and snapping jaws circled her, drawn by the commotion. Kalen didn't hesitate. He fired a warning shot over the creature's head. It hissed, momentarily distracted, thrashing its tail. Lyrexi surfaced, gasping, her skin flashing panicked crimson and white. "Kalen, help!" The weeds were tightening around her torso and legs. "Hold on." He waded into the surprisingly cold water, firing again near the creature, forcing it to back off slightly. He reached Lyrexi, grabbing the thick, slimy weeds. They felt unnervingly strong, pulsing faintly. "Some kind of predatory plant," he grunted, trying to rip them away. "Grows fast," Lyrexi choked out, struggling to stay afloat. "Feeds on energy." Her own bioluminescence seemed to be attracting it, making it tighten its grip. Kalen holstered his weapon and drew his vibro knife. He started sawing at the tough fibers, mindful of Lyraxi's skin underneath. The creature circled closer again, emboldened. Lyrexi cried out as the weeds constricted further. Desperation clawed at Kalen. He needed both hands for the knife, couldn't keep firing. "Lyrexi, your resonance, can you push it back?" The animal, she shook her head frantically, water splashing. "Can't focus. Entangled, draining." He sliced through one thick strand, then another. The creature lunged, jaws snapping shut inches from his arm. He instinctively shoved behind him, putting himself between her and the beast, while continuing to hack at the weeds binding her leg. Suddenly, Lyrexi let out a sharp, resonant cry, not directed at the creature, but seemingly inward. The light on her skin flared brilliantly, an uncontrolled burst of pure white energy that pulsed outwards. The effect was instantaneous. The predatory weeds recoiled as if burned, loosening their grip. The reptilian creature shrieked, blinded by the light, and thrashed away into deeper water. The resonant pulse washed over Kalen too, a wave of raw, untamed energy, fear, pain, desperation, but also a fierce, protective instinct aimed not at him, but through him at the threat. It left him staggering, momentarily breathless, the echo of her raw emotion ringing in his bones. Lyrexi collapsed against him as the last weed released her, her body trembling, the intense light fading rapidly, leaving her skin dull and gray. He caught her, holding her upright in the chest-deep water. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough with adrenaline and the lingering shock of her resonant blast. She nodded weakly, leaning against him, her wet tendrils clinging to his shoulders. "Tired," she whispered. "Drained." He supported her, pulling her towards the shore. The close contact, her near weightlessness in the water, her damp skin against his arm, sent a jolt of awareness through him that had nothing to do with the residual resonance. He half carried her onto the sand, away from the grasping weeds. She sank down, shivering despite the warm air, pulling her knees to her chest. Kalen knelt beside her, checking her for injuries. There were angry red welts where the weeds had constricted, but her skin wasn't broken. The grayish pallor worried him more. She looked utterly depleted, the vibrant light that usually animated her almost extinguished. "That was intense," he said quietly, handing her a thermal blanket from the ship's emergency kit. "That pulse," she huddled under the blanket, avoiding his eyes. "Uncontrolled," she murmured. "Dangerous, drained too much." She looked small and fragile, stripped of her usual alien confidence. He felt a surge of protectiveness, sharp and fierce, surprising him with its intensity. He sat beside her on the sand, not touching but staying close. They watched the water lap at the shore in silence for a long time. The reptilian creature didn't return. The jungle sounds slowly resumed their normal rhythm. "Thank you, Kalen," Lyrexi said finally, her voice still faint. "You saved me." "You saved yourself, mostly," he deflected, though his heart was still hammering from the fear. "That light show was something else." She finally looked at him, her dark eyes shadowed with exhaustion but holding a flicker of warmth. "Was for you too, creature too close." The admission hung between them. She had protected him even while trapped and drained. He reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed a stray, damp tendril from her cheek. Her skin was cool to the touch. A faint spark of blue light flickered where his fingers made contact, a brief, tentative connection. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly into the touch, a soft sigh escaping her lips. The air grew thick again, charged not with fear this time, but with a different kind of intensity. The adrenaline of the fight morphed into a keen awareness of their proximity, the shared danger, the unexpected intimacy of the rescue. Her vulnerability was disarming, chipping away at his remaining defenses. He saw the pulse quicken at the base of her throat, saw the blue light deepen almost imperceptibly. He traced the line of her jaw with his thumb, feeling the smooth skin, the faint thrum of her returning resonance beneath it. Her eyes fluttered closed, her breathing hitching. He leaned closer, drawn by an irresistible force, the scent of her, the faint hum that vibrated in the air between them. His lips hovered inches from hers. The world seemed to narrow to this single point, this precipice of contact. The sounds of the jungle faded. The crashed ship, the threat of Cygnus, the vast gulf between their species, none of it mattered in that suspended moment. There was only the pull, the need, the question hanging unspoken between them. He could feel the hesitant warmth returning to her skin, the blue light intensifying, swirling now with nascent gold. He closed the remaining distance, his lips brushing hers. The first touch was tentative, electric. A soft gasp escaped Lyraxy, her lips parting slightly beneath his. Her skin flared where they touched, his hand on her jaw, their mouths meeting, a brilliant, startling gold that pulsed outwards, washing the twilight beach in warm light. He felt it not just as light, but as a wave of pure sensation flooding his system, warmth, connection, a dizzying sense of her surprise mingling with a deeper, resonant yes. He deepened the kiss, pulling her closer, his other arm wrapping around her back, drawing her shivering body against his. She responded instantly, eagerly, her initial hesitation dissolving. Her arms went around his neck, her strange, webbed fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him tighter. Her resonance wrapped around him, no longer uncontrolled or draining, but intimate, searching, sharing. It wasn't just a physical kiss, it was a sensory overload. He felt the smooth coolness of her skin under the blanket, the dampness of her tendrils against his neck, tasted the alien sweetness of her mouth, and simultaneously experienced an echo of her own sensations, the feel of his rougher skin, the texture of his hair, the surprising warmth of his body. Flashes of her relief, her fear fading into desire, her intense focus on him, pulsed through the connection. It was overwhelming, intoxicating. He broke the kiss, gasping for breath, resting his forehead against hers. They were both trembling. Lyraxy's eyes were closed, her face luminous, bathed in the soft golden light emanating from her own skin. Her lips were slightly swollen, her breathing rapid. "Kalen," she breathed, the name a resonant sigh that vibrated against his own lips. He opened his eyes, looking down at her, mesmerized by the shifting light, the raw emotion so openly displayed. There was no hiding with her, no faking. Her feelings were literally worn on her skin, and right now her skin blazed with nascent passion, curiosity, and a connection that felt terrifyingly real. "Lyraxy," he whispered back, tracing the curve of her cheekbone with his thumb. The golden light pulsed brighter under his touch. He wanted more, needed more. The carefully constructed walls he'd maintained for so long had crumbled, washed away by the intensity of the rescue, the vulnerability, this explosive connection. He kissed her again, harder this time, driven by a sudden fierce need. She met his urgency, her mouth opening, her resonance surging, pulling him deeper into the sensory flood. He felt her desire, sharp and clear, mingling with his own, creating a feedback loop that threatened to consume them both. Her hand slid down his back, mapping the muscles there, her touch sending sparks across his skin. He fumbled with the clasp of the thermal blanket, needing to feel her, all of her. He pushed the blanket aside, revealing the smooth expanse of her shoulders and back, the intricate patterns of light swirling across her skin like living constellations. She shivered, but not from cold. He ran his hands over her cool, smooth skin, marveling at the texture, the way the light followed his touch, blooming into brighter hues. She arched against him, making a soft sound deep in her throat, a resonant purr that vibrated through his chest. This was insane. He was kissing an alien on a hostile moon, hunted by a corporation in a broken ship. But none of the danger mattered as much as the overwhelming reality of her in his arms, the sheer, undeniable rightness of this connection. He pulled back slightly, looking into her deep, dark eyes, now glowing faintly with reflected golden light. "Inside," he murmured, his voice thick. "Ship." She nodded, her gaze locked with his, a silent understanding passing between them. He helped her stand, keeping one arm wrapped around her waist, acutely aware of her skin against his, the lingering resonance humming between them. They walked slowly back towards the rust bucket, the golden glow surrounding Lyraxi illuminating the path, turning the familiar cove into a place of magic and dangerous promise. Inside the cramped confines of the ship, the air felt even more charged. He sealed the ramp, shutting out the jungle night, enclosing them in their own small universe. The ship's dim emergency lights seemed to pale in comparison to the soft, internal radiance emanating from Lyraxi. She stood before him, watching him with an unnerving intensity, her earlier vulnerability replaced by a quiet confidence, a sense of purpose. The light on her skin had softened slightly but still held the warm golden hue, swirling gently with anticipation. He reached out, cupping her face in his hands. Her skin was warming now, radiating a gentle heat. "Are you sure?" He asked, the question feeling inadequate, almost foolish given the circumstances. She leaned into his touch, her eyelids fluttering. "Feel sure," she whispered, her resonance deepening, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. She placed her hands flat on his chest, mirroring his gesture. He felt the familiar tingle, the sense of being seen, but this time it wasn't startling. It was intimate, welcome. He could feel her focused intent, her desire, her complete attention centered on him. It was intoxicating, terrifying, exhilarating. He lowered his head, capturing her lips again. The kiss was slower now, deeper, a deliberate exploration. He tasted salt and starlight, felt the subtle vibration of her hum against his mouth. Her hand slid up his chest, tangling in the fabric of his shirt, then moving beneath it, her cool fingers spreading warmth across his bare skin. A gasp escaped him at the direct contact. Her touch was electric, sending waves of pleasure through him. The golden light on her skin intensified, pulsing in time with their deepening kiss, bathing the small cargo hold in an intimate, otherworldly glow. He fumbled with the fastenings of his own shirt, pulling it off, needing nothing between them. Lyraxi watched him, her eyes dark and dilated, her breathing shallow. She reached out, tracing the muscles of his chest with her fingertips, her touch sending shivers down his spine. The light followed her fingers, leaving trails of gold against his human skin. It felt strange, alien, yet incredibly erotic. He reached for her, his hands exploring the smooth curves of her back, the dip of her waist, the flare of her hips. Her skin felt like cool silk, yet radiated an inner warmth. The light patterns shifted and flowed under his touch, responding to his caress, broadcasting her pleasure in waves of color and resonance that vibrated deep within him. This was more than physical. It was a communion, a merging of senses that transcended species. He lifted her easily, her body surprisingly light, and carried her the few steps to the narrow bunk built into the ship's bulkhead. He laid her down gently, her luminous skin stark against the utilitarian gray padding. She looked up at him, her dark eyes full of trust and burgeoning passion, the golden light swirling around her like captured starlight. He knelt beside the bunk, his gaze tracing the lines of her body, the long, elegant limbs, the subtle flare of her hips, the gentle curve of her breasts. The light patterns concentrated there, swirling pools of deeper gold and rose. He leaned down, kissing the hollow of her throat, feeling the rapid pulse beneath her cool skin, tasting the faint saltiness left by the lagoon. A soft, resonant sigh escaped her, the sound vibrating against his lips, sending a fresh wave of desire through him. Her hands came up, tangling in his hair again, guiding him. Her touch was demanding now, less tentative. The resonance intensified, a palpable hum in the air, drawing him deeper into her sensory world. He felt echoes of her pleasure as his lips explored the sensitive skin along her collarbone, the curve of her shoulder. The golden light pulsed brighter, warmer. He kissed his way lower, his mouth finding the peak of her breast. She arched off the bunk with a sharp gasp, the light flaring supernova bright for a heartbeat, pure white edged with crimson. The resonant hum spiked, vibrating through his teeth, and he felt her intense pleasure slam into him, raw and unfiltered. It was intoxicating, addictive. He suckled gently, rewarded by another surge of light and resonance, another wave of shared sensation. Her fingers tightened in his hair, her hips moving restlessly on the bunk. She whispered his name, not like a word but like a resonant chord, full of need and aching pleasure. He moved lower, kissing the smooth skin of her abdomen, feeling the muscles there quiver under his touch. The light patterns shifted, becoming intricate, almost fractal-like, swirling eddies of gold, rose, and a deep, passionate crimson. He felt her anticipation building, a tangible pressure in the resonant field surrounding them. He hesitated, unsure of her anatomy, the differences between them suddenly seeming vast and potentially hazardous. Lyraxi seemed to sense his hesitation. She reached down, her cool fingers guiding his hand. "Is safe, Kalen," she murmured, her voice thick with arousal, the resonance a deep thrumming bass note. Different but same need. Her touch showed him where, how. He explored gently at first, finding her slick heat, the surprisingly soft, petal-like folds hidden beneath the smooth skin. She gasped again, her hips lifting off the bunk, her back arching. The light pulsed violently, waves of color washing over them, crimson dominating now, shot through with flashes of electric blue. Her resonance became a high-pitched keen, vibrating against his skin, making his own nerves feel frayed and exquisitely sensitive. He increased the pressure, learning the rhythm that made her light flare brightest, that made her resonant cry sharpen with pleasure. He felt her climax building, an immense gathering of energy within her resonant field. It was like standing too close to a charging generator, the air thick with power, his own body thrumming in sympathetic vibration. He wanted to be inside her when that energy broke. He quickly shed the rest of his clothes, the cool air of the cabin raising goosebumps on his skin. He moved over her, settling his weight between her legs. She opened for him immediately, her long legs wrapping around his waist, pulling him down. Her eyes met his, dark pools reflecting the swirling crimson light, filled with fierce intensity. "Now, Kalen," she urged, her voice strained, the resonance almost painful in its power. He entered her slowly, carefully. Her inner heat enveloped him, slick and welcoming. It felt different, undeniably alien, yet perfectly, fundamentally right. She cried out, a sharp, resonant sound, her body convulsing around him. The light flared, washing the cabin in blinding crimson, and the resonant energy peaked, slamming into him like a physical force. It wasn't just her pleasure he felt, but a sense of merging, of two resonant fields aligning, harmonizing, becoming briefly, impossibly, one. He gasped, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the shared climax, his own release triggered prematurely by the force of hers. For a long moment they clung together, trembling, bathed in the slowly fading crimson glow, the resonant hum gradually subsiding into a soft, contented thrum. Her skin felt incredibly hot against his, radiating the afterglow of her release. He shifted his weight slightly, looking down at her. Her eyes were closed, her lips slightly parted, a faint smile playing on them. The light had softened back to a warm, gentle gold, pulsing softly in time with her slowing heartbeat. He felt an echo of her deep contentment, her sated pleasure, and beneath it, a profound sense of connection, of rightness. He brushed a stray tendril from her face, his fingers lingering on her cheek. She opened her eyes, her gaze soft, luminous. She lifted a hand, tracing the line of his jaw, her touch sending familiar sparks across his skin. "Kalen," she whispered, the resonance a gentle caress. He leaned down, kissing her softly, a kiss devoid of the earlier frantic passion, filled instead with tenderness and a dawning sense of wonder. He had crossed a line, not just physically, but emotionally. He had connected with her in a way he'd never connected with anyone, human or otherwise. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach when he thought of Cygnus, of the future. But it was overshadowed by the overwhelming reality of Lyraxi, of the bond forged between them in shared danger and unexpected intimacy. He settled beside her on the narrow bunk, pulling her close, her cool skin a contrast to his own warmth. She curled against him, her head resting on his shoulder, her tendrils draping across his chest. The golden light pulsed softly, a steady, comforting rhythm. He felt the gentle thrum of her resonance, a low, contented hum that seemed to seep into his bones, soothing frayed nerves, quieting old anxieties. He closed his eyes, breathing in her unique scent, feeling the steady rise and fall of her chest against his side. For the first time since fleeing Whisperwind Station, maybe for the first time in years, Kalen felt a sense of peace, a fragile hope blooming in the wreckage of his carefully controlled life. He was terrifyingly exposed, bound to an alien fugitive, but lying there, holding Lyraxy as her light pulsed softly against him. He wouldn't have traded it for anything. The aftermath was awkward and surprisingly domestic. Waking up entangled with a luminous alien woman whose skin broadcasted her contentment in soft golden pulses wasn't exactly in Kalen's usual repertoire. He extricated himself carefully from the narrow bunk, trying not to disturb Lyraxy's sleep. Her resonance was a low, peaceful hum, barely perceptible, and her light was muted, almost dormant. He pulled on his pants and shirt, feeling ridiculously self-conscious. What were the rules now? Did they talk about it, ignore it, offer her coffee even though she probably didn't drink it? He busied himself checking the ship's status, needing the familiarity of the controls. Power levels were stable but low. External sensors showed nothing but jungle and ocean. They were safe for now. He felt eyes on him and turned. Lyraxy was awake, sitting up on the bunk, watching him. The golden light returned softly as their eyes met, swirling with a sleepy warmth. She stretched languidly, her long limbs unfolding with alien grace, the movement sending ripples of light across her skin. "Good morning," she offered, the human phrase sounding musical in her resonant voice. Kalen cleared his throat. Yeah, morning." He gestured vaguely towards the ration dispenser. "Hungry? We have nutrient paste, or those weirdly dusty bars you hate." A soft chuckle like wind chimes. "Fruit," she said, sliding off the bunk. She moved towards the ramp controls, completely unself-conscious in her nudity, her skin glowing softly in the dim light. Kalen quickly looked away, focusing intently on a diagnostic screen that didn't need checking. He heard the ramp lower, letting in the sounds and scents of the jungle morning. When he looked back, she was gone, presumably foraging. He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Okay, so nudity wasn't a big deal for her species. Good to know. Less good for his concentration. He managed to brew some semblance of coffee from his dwindling supplies. Lyraxy returned a few minutes later, carrying large, glossy leaves piled high with vibrant purple berries and segments of pale green fruit. She rinsed off in the waterfall, droplets clinging to her skin and tendrils, catching the light. She offered him a piece of the green fruit. It was cool and juicy, tasting faintly of melon and spice. They ate in a comfortable silence, sitting on the lowered ramp, watching the alien sunrise paint the sky in hues of orange and violet. The earlier awkwardness eased, replaced by a quiet intimacy. "Repairs complete?" Lyraxy asked, tilting her head towards the ship's interior. "Mostly," Kalen admitted. "Engine core is stable thanks to you. Nav systems are functional, we can fly." He hesitated. "Question is, where?" Lyraxy looked out at the ocean, her expression thoughtful, the light on her skin a calm, steady blue. "Cygnus will expect us. Near known routes, trade lanes." "Exactly. Going back to civilized space is asking for trouble, but staying here," he trailed off. It felt safe now, idyllic almost, but it wasn't sustainable. The rust bucket wasn't equipped for long-term planetary stays, and eventually someone would stumble upon this moon. Lyraxy turned to him, her dark eyes serious. "There are places. Hidden worlds, sanctuaries used by my people before." Her light flickered with a touch of sadness. "Few know of them now, hard to find, shielded." Hope sparked in Kalen's chest. "Can you find one, navigate us there?" She nodded slowly. "Requires focus, deep resonance, and trust." She looked directly at him, her gaze unwavering. "Must link with ship's navigation. With you, link with him, like she'd done with the console, but deeper." The memory of her resonant touch, the overwhelming sensory input, the feeling of being utterly exposed, sent a tremor of apprehension through him. But the alternative, returning to a life of hiding, constantly looking over his shoulder, inevitably losing her to Cygnus, was unthinkable. He met her gaze. "Okay," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Okay, let's do it." Preparations took most of the day. Kalen topped off the water tanks from the spring, secured loose equipment, and ran final checks on the ship. Lyraxy spent time meditating near the waterfall, gathering her strength, her resonant field growing stronger, humming with focused energy. As dusk began to settle, painting the cove in long shadows, they sealed the ship and took their seats in the cockpit. Kalen powered up the main systems, the familiar hum a counterpoint to the deeper resonance now emanating from Lyraxy. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, placing her hands on the navigation console. The blue light flared under her skin, brighter this time, laced with silver threads. Need connection, Kalen. Open mind. Don't resist. He took a deep breath, trying to relax, to lower the mental shields he'd spent years building. He focused on Lyraxy, on the trust that had grown between them, on the shared future they were trying to build. Lyraxy reached out her other hand towards him, palm up, hovering in the space between their seats. The air crackled faintly. He hesitated for only a second, then placed his hand in hers. The connection slammed into place, far more intense than any previous touch. It wasn't just warmth and light. It was a torrent of information, sensation, emotion. He felt her mind brush against his, alien and vast, yet strangely familiar. He felt her focused intent, the complex stellar cartography unfolding in her consciousness, translating into navigation data for the ship. He felt her memories, flashes of lost worlds, resonant songs, the terror of the Cygnus labs, the loneliness of her flight. And she felt his, the grid of scavenger outposts, the hum of his ship's engines, the ache of past losses, the cynical shell protecting a core of longing, his fierce, unexpected protectiveness of her. It was terrifying, exhilarating, impossibly intimate. He fought the instinct to pull back, forcing himself to stay open, trusting her. Her resonance flowed through him, aligning with his own biosignature, then reaching out, merging with the ship's systems. The navigation display flickered, then resolved into a complex multi-dimensional star chart unlike any he'd ever seen, depicting pathways through folded space, hidden routes undetectable by conventional sensors, coordinates locked in. Course laid in, Lyraxy whispered, her voice strained but triumphant. The light pulsed a brilliant silver blue. Ready to jump. Kalen gripped the controls, his hand still linked with hers, feeling the steady thrum of her resonance. Hold on tight, he said, engaging the hyperdrive. The ship lurched, space-time twisting around them, pulling them towards an unknown destination, towards a future neither of them could have imagined together. The journey through the hidden Lumerian pathways was unlike any jump Kalen had ever experienced. It wasn't the brutal wrench of standard FTL, but a smoother, almost fluid transit through dimensions that shimmered with colors he couldn't name. Lyraxy remained linked, her hand in his, her resonance guiding the rust bucket through the complex currents, her light a steady silver blue beacon in the cockpit. It required immense concentration from both of them, her focus navigating the non-Euclidean routes, his keeping the ship stable and interpreting her resonant signals through the feedback loop. They couldn't maintain the link constantly. After several hours, Lyraxy would pull back, exhausted, the light dimming, leaving Kalen feeling strangely bereft. They'd drift in the strange twilight between dimensions, sharing rations, talking quietly, or simply sitting in companionable silence, the shared experience forging a deeper bond between them. He learned more about her people, their deep connection to universal resonance, their ability to shape energy and even organic matter through focused sound and light. He understood now why Cygnus hunted her. She wasn't just a biological curiosity. She was potential power, a living weapon, a key to technologies beyond human comprehension. She, in turn, learned about Earth, about human history, our contradictory mix of violence and art, logic and emotion. She found human concepts like sarcasm endlessly baffling but fascinating. You say, opposite, she'd puzzle, tilting her head, green light flickering with curiosity. But feel. Not opposite, feel, fondness, underneath. He'd just grumble, unable to deny it, flustered by her uncanny ability to see past his defenses. The physical intimacy between them continued, evolving beyond the initial desperate passion. It became slower, more exploratory, laced with tenderness and a growing emotional vulnerability. Making love to Lyraxy was still an overwhelming sensory experience, the shared resonance and shifting light patterns creating a feedback loop of pleasure and connection. But now, intertwined with the physical release, was a deeper sense of knowing, of being truly seen and accepted, flaws and all. He found himself touching her even outside of intimacy, a hand brushing her arm, fingers tangling in her tendrils, simply needing the contact, the reassurance of her presence, the faint hum of her resonance. She reciprocated easily, naturally, her touch-focused culture making physical affection as normal as breathing. She'd lean against him while he piloted, trace patterns of light on his skin while they talked, her proximity a constant, comforting presence. One cycle, while resting between jumps, Kaelin found her staring intently at the blank bulkhead, her expression troubled, the light on her skin swirling with anxious violet hues. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, sitting beside her. She looked at him, her dark eyes clouded. "Cygnus," she whispered. "Feel, faint echo there, seeking, they have not given up." A cold dread seeped back into Kaelin. He'd allowed himself to hope, to believe they were truly safe in these hidden pathways. "Are they close? Can they track us here?" "No, not track, not here, but searching, casting wide net, using captured Lumerian tech, amplifiers." She shivered, the violet light deepening. "They learn, adapt." Kaelin swore under his breath. Of course they wouldn't give up. Lyraxy was too valuable. "We need to reach this sanctuary soon." "Almost there," she reassured him, though her own anxiety still resonated faintly. "One more jump. To Kurala. She described it as a water world, similar to the moon where they'd hidden, but with ancient Lumerian structures built into living coral reefs, shielded by powerful resonant fields keyed to her species. A place of refuge, of potential rebuilding. The final jump was smooth. They emerged into normal space in a binary star system Kaelin didn't recognize. Before them hung Kurala, a breathtaking world of turquoise oceans under twin suns, one gold, one pale blue. As they approached, the rust bucket's sensors went haywire, overwhelmed by complex energy readings. "The shield," Lyraxy murmured, her eyes bright with anticipation and relief. The light on her skin shifted to a vibrant, hopeful cyan. She placed her hands on the console again, linking briefly with the ship. Transmitting, recognition sequence. A low, resonant pulse emanated from the ship, directed at the planet. For a moment nothing happened. Then the energy field surrounding Kurala seemed to shimmer, and a pathway opened, a corridor of calm energy leading towards the upper atmosphere. Kaelin piloted them through, awestruck. Below, vast, intricate structures were visible beneath the waves, towers and domes of living coral in impossible shapes, glowing with soft internal light, harmonizing with the planet's natural resonance. It was beautiful, ancient, and undeniably alien. Lyraxy directed him towards a specific location, a massive atoll surrounding a deep, crystalline lagoon. As they descended, platforms rose from the water, forming a landing area perfectly sized for the rust bucket. He set the ship down gently. The moment the engines cut out, Lyraxy was unbuckling, her face alight with emotion Kaelin couldn't quite decipher, relief, joy, sorrow, all mingling in the swirling patterns of light. She ran to the ramp, hitting the controls. It lowered onto the smooth, pearlescent surface of the landing platform. Warm, fragrant air filled the ship, carrying the sound of gentle waves and distant, melodic chimes. Lyraxy stepped out onto the platform, taking a deep, shuddering breath. Tears, shimmering like liquid light, tracked paths down her cheeks, leaving trails of silver luminescence. She turned back to Kaelin, who had followed her out, her expression raw with emotion. "We are home," she whispered, though the words sounded fragile, tinged with the knowledge of all that had been lost. Kaelin stepped forward, instinctively reaching for her. He didn't know what to say, what comfort he could offer. He simply stood before her, his presence a silent promise. She looked up at him, her tear-bright eyes searching his face. The light on her skin softened, shifting from the bright cyan of arrival to the warm gold of connection, deepening with hints of the passionate crimson he now knew so well. "You brought me home, Kaelin," she said, her voice thick with resonant emotion. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands, her touch sending waves of warmth and gratitude through him. "My people gone, place empty, but not alone now." He covered her hands with his own. "No," he said gruffly, his own throat tight. "Not alone." The future was still uncertain. Cygnus was still out there. Rebuilding a life, bridging the gap between their vastly different origins wouldn't be easy. But here, in this hidden sanctuary, surrounded by the echoes of her lost civilization, Kaelin felt a certainty settle deep within him. He had made his choice back on Whisperwind, confirmed it in the asteroid field, sealed it in the intimacy of their shared journey. Lyraxi leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his, their resonant fields merging easily now, comfortably. He felt her deep affection, her trust, her unwavering belief in them. She whispered, "Don't leave me," he thought, the memory of her desperate plea on the derelict station surfacing. And he knew with absolute clarity that he couldn't. He'd crossed galaxies, broken laws, risked everything. He'd betray Earth itself if it meant staying here with her. Lyraxi pulled back slightly, her eyes shining. A slow, radiant smile spread across her face, full of promise. "Stay," she whispered, the single word both a question and an invitation, resonating with all the hope of a new beginning. Kalen met her smile with his own, feeling the last of his old defenses crumble away, leaving only the raw, honest truth of his feelings. "Always," he answered, sealing the promise with a kiss, the twin sons of Kurala bathing them in the light of their shared dawn.